Time for another part of the Sparta Abridged campaign, where previously we had mixed results in my quest to get out of the campaign by losing in a valiant sort of way. Because while the enemy made some progress against us, the sheer glitchiness of the game was holding them back. We eventually managed to lose some territory in Italy, so we're starting to get somewhere now, but we need the AI to be generally more aggressive and keep this up. My main enemy with this whole plan is actually going to be the fact that we're going to run out of money and food. A city can't upkeep itself, and it certainly can't upkeep many units to sit in its garrison. So I'm starting to use what's left of my money to convert buildings into food buildings as much as possible, to see how long we can last really. I'm not sure we actually can create a sustainable fortified economy, but we're doing something. We've got this nice little scam going down here in Tarraco. Because the enemy refused to attack and are just constantly raiding, it keeps spawning a rebellion. It always spawns right next to me, so I can kill them and release the captives to get some free money and free experience as well, so that's very nice. Now I get a second chance at the battle I messed up last time. We need to treat the AI very gently to prevent them from glitching out, so that they can come and stand in this kill zone I had planned in Sparta to do my exciting Phalangetes bowling scheme. Like before, I've walled myself off in the most secure part of Sparta. The enemy have sent some of their Javcav, their general's Javcav in fact, to bombard me here, and I'm counter-firing with arrows. They actually killed loads of my hoplites by throwing jabs like this. Inconvenient, not too much we can do about it. Eventually though, we do get what I want. We've got no frills in this battle. Everything is deployed behind our barricades, so the enemy aren't distracted at all. They don't walk off around the map. Here we go. We've got all of their massed infantry deploying right in front of my ballistae. So we can sit back in first person mode and shoot them. You can see though that the ballista are sufficiently inaccurate that you can miss these blobs even at relatively close range. So now I just sit and do this. There's nothing to commentate on, so I'll have to cut most of it out. But I really enjoy doing this. I remember it being my happy place when I was playing Total War Attila as Roman Britain for a very long time. It's kind of like you're contributing to the fight. It's kind of like gameplay, dare I say. It feels like you're doing something to be using the first-person camera. You can see I switched to using the flaming shot. That's not really any more effective than regular shot as far as I can tell, but you can also see I unlocked machine gun mode, where it turns out if you kind of right and left click a lot, it skips the reload, and you can shoot extremely quickly out of a ballista, so that's pretty nice. I am actually losing units in these fights. I need to pay some attention. Unfortunate that this game isn't a first-person shooter. I've been playing Doom recently. I think that's pretty fun. Maybe they can incorporate that kind of gameplay into this somehow. That would be nice. Anyway, it just goes on. The two sides are just going to grind against each other. The only other slightly interesting thing I can do is use jabs to throw into the blob. I eventually decided to use fire at will on the ballistae in order to get some kills, because I figured we do actually need to win the fight, and attacking in first person is very inefficient. It's the slow way of killing things. It's just a bit more entertaining. So I started just doing a attack ground order on the middle of their blob. Maybe that's killing something, but as you can see, I eventually got bored and went back to doing it myself. We're getting plenty of kills this way. We are suffering in the fight because we're fighting the front of pike phalanxes, so while we're in a strong position, so are the enemy. Both sides are weak against each other, and we're a bit more weak against them because our sticks are shorter, but we've got a lot of rocks raining down on the enemy, and that does make a difference. So here we are towards the end of the fight. We're winning on the balance bar, which means even though the grinds don't look that good, we should win eventually, who knows. Our uncommitted cav aren't going to be terribly useful though, so it depends how much they count for. Need to get my jabs out of this fight so we can throw some jabs into it. Those tightly packed pike phalanxes are going to be a nice juicy target for jabs, and here you can see the jab attack starts to turn this little fight. Pretty much everything is wavering in there, and then they start to rout. So we're going to be able to break through in this pocket, and then go and rear attack the other pocket, which isn't in the best of shape either. And that's how we win the battle, long story short. We do lose a whole bunch of our infantry, and I'm charging loads of heavy spears with cav, but at this stage, it's enough. It looks like it was our pike phalanx units that were holding on in the end, fighting downhill against the enemy. I'm pretty sure if we had just pike phalanxes instead of hoplites, we would be golden here. Anyway, it was good enough, and with nearly 1,000 kills on that one ballista unit, that probably made a big difference in the result. The enemy are pushed back, and I guess I got what I wanted here. This time I actually didn't want to lose, so I've got a good victory, if there ever is such a thing. I got to see my bowling plan take place. And now we're going to follow it up by taking our tiny army out to night attack everything that remains here, because 2 of the armies were just a general, so we can just auto-resolve to kill them. The other one did have a couple of units, but when I killed the second general, I was so close to the other army that it was forced to move away to a position where I can't reach it, so that's the end of that. I'm actually stuck in the zone of control of Athens, so we have to do the old walk towards it, walk away trick thing to get out of that. And now we can go home. Overall, the Defense of Sparta campaign has been a great success. And now we're going to move on to another much looked for battle. My river defense plan finally happens. We've got this powerful enemy army coming in against our slightly beaten up river defense specialist force. We're raiding, which debuffs us, and we're low on supplies, which debuffs us as well, plus we're low on troops in many of our units. But this is what I wanted, so let's see if we can hold this crossing. We get an unusual map, in that there's only one crossing point. I thought there were always 2, but I guess sometimes there's just one, which makes things both easier and harder for us in different ways. The easy part being, well, we can just put our pike phalanx right here and the enemy have to run into it. You can see I was trying to sacrifice some helots to absorb some of the enemy's javelins. They're one of these factions where virtually every unit will throw javelins, and that is going to be something our pike phalanx is weak against, so this crowd of generic spears is bombarding us and actually doing quite a lot of damage. Plus, because we're on the slow combat mod, even the ones that aren't killing are taking off a whole load of health, and now our guys will be nearly dead. As you can see, pike phalanxes don't quote-unquote work, so we have issues where the guys are facing the wrong direction as the fight starts, and the perennial issue will be that while they're fighting, people will continuously break formation. So it's not actually the infinitely strong frontal wall of pikes like it was in something like Total War Rome 1. We are going to be vulnerable here. We'll just trade efficiently on that front line. Another vulnerability is to the enemy's archers. They can sit back there on the other side and gradually snipe our phalanxes down. My main plan to counter this was to try and hit those archers with my slingers. I think slingers slightly outrange archers, so we should be able to hit them while we're standing behind our phalanx. My other plan there is to put some weaker spears on top of that phalanx that's getting shot, so that they absorb the arrows and use their shields. All high quality sacrifice strategies in this battle. Ordinarily we'd be able to send our cav around to take out those archers, but because it's only a single crossing battle, we can't really do that, so that's the weakness of there only being one crossing. We can't do rear attacks, making our options very limited. Essentially we're just limited to standing here and hoping that we win. I did manage to take out some of the archers, but not all of them, so we're going to get sniped a bit more throughout the fight. As for the main part of the fight, I came down here to investigate what's going on. We're getting some kills on our pike phalanx, but you can see the problems here and there. People in the phalanx will just leave it to go and fight normally in the melee, and phalanx units tend to have slightly lower melee stats than normal units, so that means we are gradually losing troops, even if lots of the enemy are being forced to not attack us by the knockback effect of the pikes, which is giving us extra longevity. I'm setting up here with these reserve hoplites, ready for when that centre of our line buckles. It didn't look like it was going to last all that long. One thing we can do at this stage is to start reeling in the enemy's ranged units. I spotted some jabs in particular who are coming into the fight. The reel-in effect is just by having our general be near the front lines. Once the enemy are in range of something good, like your general, they tend to attack it. So we can get the enemy to fight our general at range, move the general backwards, and this kind of pulls everything into the main blob when we get to this point here. Our general's off in the distance, still just about getting shot, but a lot of the enemy models won't be able to see because their line of sight is technically blocked by the blob that they're in, and that will dramatically reduce the amount of arrows and jabs that our forces will be taking. So that's handy. I need to bring my general back if I can to use his buffs and his morale aura so that we last a bit longer, since we are actually gradually losing the frontline battle. Here's a bit later. We've got some more kills, but it's not enough, and the pike phalanx only gets more broken as it fights on. Once it has too few troops for its width, it will certainly get broken up and just become a not very good unit. So we need to be ready for that next phase of the fight once they break through, and we are ready. So let's cut to them breaking through. Now we have some regular hoplites here. These guys don't break formation, which is nice. They're much less likely to get drawn out into the enemy blob. However, they're also less effective and their sticks are less long, so that's not very impressive. But I'm sure the Phalangites traded quite well. They are a very expensive unit, so I don't know if we traded well in terms of value, but I tend not to think about it in those terms. We killed more guys than we lost guys, and that's probably a good thing. Now we're committing to the final grind. We're just going to put everything onto that front line and hope that we win the fight. They've got a lot more stuff, but our stuff's probably a bit better. The phalanx might be doing something, and that's all there is to it, I guess. We can't really do any maneuvers yet, at least, because we're just stuck here. We need to somehow win these fights. It's going to go pretty well at the one point where my general is now engaged, because he can come in with higher stamina and just being a way better unit than most of the enemy stuff, so his part of the line will do fine. Things went strangely well at the right end of the line where I had this low quality spear unit just holding on against stuff. Maybe again the stamina advantage helped. They do eventually die, and this brings us to the phase in the battle when I can use my Jav Cav for something. Once parts of the line have been folded away, enemy flanks or enemy bits are exposed, we can basically get the Cav into fights where we can't charge or do anything too special, but we can just be there. And that's going to be enough to inflict some morale debuffs. And we start to see some good results. About half of the blob here is routing as the Cav get on in there. And that's perfect, because it allows us to move around the blob now that there's a bit more space and get behind it, and that's going to start sealing the deal. We can not only go after all of these routing units so that they don't come back, which they probably would if we just sat back right now, but we can get more rear attacks, and as you can see, pretty much the whole blob ended up routing, but for a couple of units, a couple of the better ones. So we could then just pile in with the scraps we have left over of our army to fight those guys. I wasn't even sure we could beat them, but we did win the battle on an army losses morale shock in the end. So there we go, we've got our pikes-based river defense off the bucket list, I suppose. It sort of worked. It wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be, actually, but we did win. We've held off that one stack of enemy troops. It doesn't really make any material difference strategically, because another stack attacks in the same turn, and our army is completely wrecked after that fight. So we're just going to get out of here. We actually get a really good retreat. We retreat just into our own territory, meaning we'll now replenish once our turn starts, which is handy. I decided to start moving them westwards from here, because we can then turn to the south and go down into Italia to defend something maybe. And otherwise, we're just kind of locking in for the final end game now, putting our armies in their final position where I'm just going to not move them anymore and see what the AI can do to us, if they want to do anything at all, which is the main problem at the moment. We do finally manage to lose that territory down in Africa that we got, I think, from Athens. Here's us losing a battle there, but not actually losing the territory. Then in the next turn, the same battle is fought again. This time the AI feels brave enough to do something with it. They're going to liberate a faction or something. So there we go, we've got rid of that. That's not going to do the best for our economy, which is starting to get worse and worse at this stage. I'll talk more about that in a second. Here in Tarraco, we've got an interesting situation. The enemy have been waiting to attack me for so long that they've all run out of supplies and they're all dying, and so am I. There are just so many people now in this region that we've got a local famine going. This kind of works for me because they have more armies and attrition is applied on a per unit basis. So they're losing much more stuff to this than I am. We'll just wait around and farm rebels. This is the next turn now though, where I do need to get rid of some of my units to stop ourselves going bankrupt very soon. So at this stage we're going to be really shaving things down. This will also have the dual effect of getting the enemy more interested in us. Part of the reason they're not attacking us is probably because we have units. If we have fewer units, we might get some more attention and get things moving. There's the biggest step I took. I just got rid of all of my river defense army. We're not going to defend that area at all anymore to give the enemy maximum chances and reason to attack. By the next turn, we're actually making some money somehow. I looked again here at the starvation situation. It's all coming along nicely. We're dying quite slowly. All of these various enemy armies dying faster. So all we have to do is stand here and we might win that part of the campaign. Finally, another battle takes place, and this time it's Syracuse also attacking Sparta. Unfortunately, I've lost my ballistas as part of my cost-cutting measures. They're very expensive to upkeep. However, I did have another particular plan that a battle at Sparta is perfect for testing out. This wasn't it, by the way, but it was good to see the enemy very willing to run their cav through all of my anti-cav stuff as the fight starts. Again, they're doing this initial attack with Jav Cav, inconvenient, but this rain of arrows will do some damage. They've exposed their non-shielded side to me as well for extra damage. Thank you very much. Here's the real plan. Someone in the comments somewhere mentioned that if you put a barricade right in front of a phalanx, it can become nice and exploity. So we're going to try that. The pikes stick through the barricade, meaning we're going to have some offensive potential while the barricade tanks damage. That's the plan, at least. I've made a crucial mistake in my deployment, so it's not happening right now. Can you tell what it is yet? Well, I've accidentally put my cav outside the town. And as before, having anything outside the town on this map seems to really aggro the AI. They're rushing everything over there. This of course confirms that the AI can see your hidden units because they're not supposed to know I have these things here. But that's probably the reason they're suddenly leaving the town in this direction all of a sudden, so they can smell me over there. All I can do is try to become more hidden. We've seen before the enemy sometimes recommit to attacking the town if you just don't let them do anything outside. There's also an opportunity we can exploit here. As they move units out of the town, they ended up leaving a couple of units of archers exposed. So I had 2 units of cav run all the way around the town and then attack in from the other direction, thus taking out those archers, which is great because that's one of the enemy's best ways to take down my pike phalanx right now. All very good, and we just about do it in time before enemy units come in to help. Now then we go back to waiting. I tuck the cav away in the corner somewhere and see if the enemy attack me. They've split into a couple of main groups. One group is still looking at my remaining cav over here on the west side of the map, not doing very much but seemingly infatuated. Some other troops are actually attacking us, but they're attacking the barricaded regular hoplites. And the barricade here works a bit. Your guys can attack through it with their short spears, but it's the long spears that can really exploit this situation and use it a lot. I notice we've got this big pile of enemies that's formed, so they've ordered a lot of guys to stand on a particular spot here, which I thought was unusual. But I've got a theory about that, which I'll talk about in a minute as more evidence appeared. And otherwise, they're just walking all over the place with loads of units doing, well, not very much. They're attacking me with 1 unit over here at the front, but even the next nearest unit doesn't seem too interested in the battle. They're walking off now. The AI has clearly got a detailed plan to do nothing in a variety of different ways. Of course, I realised that we just need to have our cav be in our army, so that they'll sniff out our cav using their hacks, bring their army over here, and then maybe get tricked into a battle. However, then I noticed that we've got the beginnings of the obliteration glitch, which we saw before on the Sparta map, as everybody decides to just go their own way and walk off into the sunset. I thought this was going to be it, but then we see a miraculous occurrence, the reverse obliteration glitch. They all start coming back together, they reform their units, and all suddenly march at once towards the site of the battle. I think the AI had a change of heart in the middle of glitching out and has decided to go for it, so I'm going to move my cav off to the left to hide around the corner. The idea being that we don't want them to actually attack our cav, we'll just get them to be right in front of our troops, and then while they're there, they might realise they're in aggro range of our units and start fighting us. This first squad seems to take the bait. They charge past where the cav were and then start engaging the barricade. They have to break through the first one here to reach our pike wall, and then the experiment begins. But I'm cutting now to a bit later, where I'd finally worked out what was going on in this battle. As you can see, the fight didn't actually start as I'd wanted. The enemy have started chasing me around the back of the settlement instead. And it occurred to me that there is actually a logic to what the AI is doing specifically. In the past, I've referred to the AI smelling your location when it seems like they're hacking the hidden thing to work out where you are when you're supposed to be hidden. And I think that actually is how it works in some degree. I noticed that where the enemy are ordering their units to kind of pile up on top of each other and pool, those are locations where I've had my cav standing still for significant amounts of time. So like right here, we see a blob sitting where my cav were in the bait position. There was another blob just now in the position where I put my cav after the bait, waiting for the fight to start. More units are moving along the route my cav took to leave that position to go and hide in a more hidden position on the other side of the map, where more enemies are sniffing about. And here's their new current position that the enemy will no doubt sniff out soon and send another squad to go and stand there. So they're just standing in all the different places that I've stood recently. I think that's what the glitch actually is. In this case then, we need to stand our cav behind our phalanx. I can just about do this because of the fighting from earlier. Part of the barricade that was locking me out is now destroyed, so I can form a column formation, just about slip my cav inside without them getting stuck on the barricade. And now everything's behind the barricade. They'll have no choice but to attack me, and finally it does work. They commit their infantry to attack my main position. So this is a very wild exploit. Just having anything outside of our formation was causing us to effectively win by default. And now we've given the enemy their chance by bringing everything in. They probably still want to attack my cav, I guess, but they've been tricked into fighting our barricades. And the plan works. The pike phalanxes will just endlessly attack through the barricade, pushing the enemy back. They are occasionally managing to attack the barricade, so this isn't an infinite solution. They will eventually break the barricade and a regular fight will start, as we do see towards the end of the battle here. And immediately our pike phalanx starts breaking formation as well. They very nicely stay in formation while they're behind the barricade, which is perfect. So that's all good. In this case we don't need this because there was so much hassle before we got to this point that the time limit's just about running out. So while we could have ground the enemy down some more, we just win on the time limit. We lost basically nothing in the fight, and we've not only explained a big exploit, we've tested and confirmed another one. The barricade pike phalanx combo works pretty good, and even works a tiny bit with a regular hoplite phalanx if you're very close to it. So that's it for this part. As for this series, well, there'll be one more episode, maybe two more. We need to end this soon, I think. I'm not quite sure what I can make happen. If I can make something more interesting happen, I will. I've got at least one more potentially interesting battle lined up. Well, we'll have to see. I'll see you next time, and maybe the time after that, as Sparta's extremely difficult downfall continues and maybe ends.